So, you read a book called Changing Your Underwear.
No, it's close to that, and it probably could tie in the same way, but it's called Make Your Bed.
Make Your Bed. What's great about Corey is he ties everything back to hunting.
My wife doesn't agree with you. And I think Make Your Bed and 10 Things to Do to Change the World. It's by retired Navy SEAL William McRaven. Life doesn't come with rewards each day, so don't expect a reward for no matter how hard you work, there might not be a reward, and that's life. He shares a story, and it's probably the most fascinating story that he shared, but he was out for a routine parachute jump, climbed up to 12,000 feet, jumped out of the airplane, and he was free-falling, doing his free-fall, checking his altimeter, got ready to deploy the parachute, and looked down below him, and another diver had slipped in directly below him. Give somebody hope. If you're up to your neck in mud, start singing.
What is it that Corey Jacobsen actually does? If it's not make the bed, what is it that works for Corey?
I'm really good at hearing and understanding principles. I'm not as good at applying them yet.
All right, folks, welcome to the Gritty Bowmen podcast. We are at the Western Hunt Expo in Salt Lake City, joined by Corey Jacobsen and Ryan Lampers. I feel as though we cannot have a Gritty Bowmen podcast at the Western Hunt Expo with Corey Jacobsen without doing some kind of Gritty Book Club podcast.
Which have been well received in the past.
They have been. And we need to do more because I enjoy them a lot. So we could talk hunting, and inevitably what's great about Corey is he ties everything back to hunting.
My wife doesn't agree with you.
So today, we're going to discuss a book that Corey has read that Ryan and I are going to read on our way home.
That's right.
From Salt Lake.
Well, just disclaimer, I didn't read it. I listened to it.
That's a modern day disclaimer that's
read.
Not necessary.
Okay.
Yes.
Good.
You just say read even if you didn't read it. Do you agree, Hillary? We've muted Hillary's microphone. Hillary Lampers.
She's here. I say it because you started saying it. I recognize you said red. I'm saying red.
Yeah, I read a book.
Yep.
I read a book.
Sounds better.
It's too much trouble to talk about. Well, actually, I listened to it, and people are like, it's a book. How do you listen to a book? And I don't know. Just, you read it.
Yeah.
So, you read a book called Changing Your Underwear.
No, it's close to that, and it probably could tie in the same way, but it's called Make Your Bed.
Make Your Bed.
And I think Make Your Bed and 10 Things to Do to Change the World. It's by retired Navy SEAL William McRaven.
I'm gonna Google it, except my Googleizer is... I lost my Googleizer.
Uh-oh. We are in trouble if Brian doesn't have his phone.
I had a phone. All right, Hillary's going to look for it. In the meantime, I'm just going to wonder where my phone is. Not a big deal.
Yeah. So a little bit of a history on it. He's retired from the Navy, was a SEAL, was over all of the SEALs in the western U.S., spent a bunch of time overseas during Iraq and Afghanistan, and he gave a commencement address at the University of Texas, I think it was University of Texas, Austin, a few years back. And in his address, he just listed 10 things that he felt these graduating college students could do to change the world and change their life. And the number one thing he said was make your bed. And the reason for that was start every day with an accomplishment, with a finished task, with success.
Okay. And I like this. I like this guy so far.
So that was it, and he shared stories. It was really cool because in his commencement address, he basically just listed the 10 things and didn't expand on them. And in the book, he expanded, shared experiences from his time in the military that tied those 10 points together. And there were some, anybody like that's been a Navy SEAL for 30 years or whatever has stories that any one of us would sit captivated and listen to. And so to hear those tied into these principles that can change the world was pretty cool.
It's really interesting because Jordan B. Peterson has a thing he says often where he mentions, he says something like clean your room. And he talks about how profound that activity is and how it extrapolates to the rest of your life. It sounds a lot like the premise of this book as well.
Yeah, and for me, I don't know, you probably can describe me better than I can describe myself, but I'm a control freak. I'm introvert. I'm, all these crazy things. But I can't be creative and I can't focus on work if I'm in a dirty workspace, if it's not clean and tidy. And I think it's just that, there's a task there that needs done. Cleaning that room is something that needs done. And if that's there on a list to be done, I can't focus on something else until that's done. And so, immediately my wife gives me a hard time. I never make the bed. I'm horrible. I'm the last one out. She gets up before me, and I leave and don't make the bed. And so I read this book, and the next 2 or 3 mornings I got up and made the bed. And, I'm like, don't be getting any ideas. Don't be giving me a book on, titled Do the Laundry or Do the Dishes or anything here. This is just I'm trying to apply something here that was suggested to me. And so,
yeah.
Before we jump in, though, I just, reading books is not my strong suit. In fact, since last year at this time, I don't know if I've read any books.
When I first met Corey, I asked him, I think on one of our second, third podcasts, I was like, Corey, tell the audience what are some of the books that have changed your life.
The last 3 books that you've read or something.
Yeah, I asked him that, and he's like, yeah, I haven't read any books. Yeah, I don't read.
Calculus 4 in 1997 at the University of Idaho when I was a mechanical engineering student. Yeah, I don't know if I've read one since then.
Yes. Okay, I'm gonna before we get into that, I'm gonna read this. Dr. Lampers, she Googleized the book for me. So here it goes. It says, "Make your bed summary. Start your day with a task completed. You can't go it alone. Only the size of your heart matters. Life's not fair. Drive on. Failure can make you stronger. You must dare greatly. Stand up to the bullies. Rise to the occasion. Give people hope. Never, ever quit."
And that right there, hearing that, I instantly, we need to come up with a term. Elk eyes doesn't sound good, but turn it into elk hunting principles. And almost everything there, I think, applies. And
Alkalizing? We're going to alkalize this book?
We alkalized the book, Make Your Bed. How does making your bed apply to being a successful elk hunter?
Yes.
No.
If you want to change the world, start off by making your bed. So let's get into that.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, when I was a kid, when I was a young man, teenager, my mom, so I grew up in a house where my mother is, she's OCD. And the house was always spotlessly cleaned. We got up at the same time. We ate the same stuff. She was controlling to
That's
it.
That's not OCD. That's structure. Structure.
Corey's relating here, and so there's just very. So I like to tell the story that I broke my mother. I broke her because I'm not quite like that naturally. No, she definitely very much like that. And one of her things was that our rooms had to be immaculately clean. My clothes had to be folded. My underwear had to be folded and in the drawer. And every day before we went to school, she would check off our room and make sure everything was like military. Make sure everything was done, and then we could leave for the school bus. Okay? And then if we missed the school bus because we could not leave till it was done, then we got all these consequences, and life was hard. So,
what were the consequences?
Stay home and scrub toilets and clean the house. So if you got stuck, if you didn't get your stuff done so that you could then get yourself to school, the consequence was you stayed home and you worked all day long doing tedious things like scrub with a toothbrush around the bottom of the toilet. And
pretty good motivator.
It's just so boring and tedious. And she would nerd out on hyper cleanliness. And so to do that, it was just mind numbing, especially for a kid like me. But one of the things that you had to do was make your bed. And I thought, what a stupid waste of time, because you're just going to get in it again and make it messy again. Right?
Yep.
Every night. It didn't make a lot of sense to my practical mind. So I made the bed perfectly, and then I had a sleeping bag that I rolled out on top.
So glad to hear you say that.
And then I slept in a sleeping bag every day for as long as I can remember. And I would stuff it under my bed when I got up in the morning to go to school. So my bed was always made. Because I'm about efficiencies, Corey.
Totally. And an underbed inspection was the weakness in your mom's structure, right?
It was a little skirt. We made a deal. I could have the underbed space to store my sleeping bag as long as
Everything
the bed was
else
made.
is clean.
She's like, I don't care. That's a fair trade.
Yeah.
So that's how I got around making sure my bed was made every single day.
Yep. And for me, I think the thing I found in the past few days of doing that is I don't feel guilty. And, because I mean, my wife does everything. There's no doubt. She does everything. And I am a terrible husband in that regard on the home front. I just,
I'm curious.
Uh-oh.
Hillary.
You want my mic?
You don't want to hear what she's going to have to say here. I really don't want her.
Let's. There you go, Hillary.
Oh, great.
Hi.
Oh, well, there
Hi,
she
Hillary.
is.
Hi.
Who does everything at your house?
It depends. Ryan's idea of clean is not that clean.
Yeah, I'm a little uncomfortable
No,
in this conversation right
but
now, to be honest.
I'm like Corey, so I think it's more traditionally a woman's deal that things have to be organized before you feel like you can relax and do something.
Mm-hmm.
So Ryan will always say to me, if you clean all the time, you're cleaning all the time. Like, just pick a day and clean.
I think Hillary just called you a woman.
I didn't say you're a woman. I just said.
It sounds like Corey's a lot like me, that these are a woman's.
Do you have a
Pretty
problem
sure that's
being
what
like
she
a woman, Corey? No, I mean, I hear it a lot from women patients.
Yeah.
They have their problem with their husband because their husband's not organized and they don't really care. But some men do. Obviously, Corey does. My brother is like, he is like Corey. He's super immaculate. Like he's like a minimalist kind of deal. So Ryan's not a minimalist at all. And we watched the minimalism movie and he was like, yeah, right. I'm going to own 13 things. I don't think so. But he's more of a piler.
Yeah.
And that does kind of irritate me. And my daughter's a piler too.
Yeah.
Nobody's really clean in my house. Actually, our little one she's an organizer.
Yeah,
she puts things away. She helps me unload the dishwasher. She's not even 3 yet.
We have a 2-year-old, and she is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Her personality
She's a little
will
Corey
be
because
like that.
Anything on the floor that's out of place, and she's looking for a spot to put it. Like,
I
where does it
didn't
go?
grow up.
She'll put things like in the garbage that don't go there. Anything she sees as garbage.
I did not grow up. My mom worked all the time.
Yeah.
My mom worked, my dad worked, and then, divorce and blah, blah, blah. So I didn't come from a super organized, anal, quote-unquote, family about that. So I don't have anything around that. I just know that I like my space to be orderly if I'm going to get something done.
Yeah.
And we have a very small house. And so sometimes I'm working at the kitchen table, which means I'm working with, everybody's stuff and dolls and horses and hunting magazines and maps and everywhere. And sometimes I do get frustrated, but I've tried to work on it because he always tells me you're stressing about things that really are not important.
Yeah, Corey.
But I try to tell him this is how I am. It would be like me telling you, quit stressing about your hunting season. What's wrong with you? Can't you just go out there and pick an animal? Why do you have to research for 6 months?
So Corey, you do this, right? You're.
So just disclaimer in case my wife listens to this podcast. I'm not a neat freak who cleans all the time by any means. Just in my workspace to be creative, I need it to be that's clean.
Yeah, no, that's what I hear you say.
I'm a piler,
I heard
too.
you say your wife does everything, is what I heard you say. So.
And she does. She does everything at the house, and she also takes it to the next level. When we got married, she said, I like to mow the yard, which I heard as don't mow the yard anymore because you don't do it the right way. And she mowed the yard when we had a big yard, and she's very stubborn in a good way because if something needs done, she's going to get it done. And she told me she was going to put the stone on our fireplace this weekend while I'm gone, which it's 18 feet in the air. And she called and said, I found somebody that has a 20-foot ladder. Don't worry about getting one.
Wow.
I mean, she's just getting stuff done, and so she does everything. And, so in the morning I get up and I go to work, and I come home, and if the bed's not made, she might make a comment that night and say, weren't you the last one out of bed this morning? Just saying.
Yeah.
And so it's made me feel real good to make the bed 3 times this week.
And
no beds are ever made in our house.
Yeah, I know.
I'm like
super
that.
lucky. I'm like you. My wife does everything. She will if I'm gone, and I am gone a lot during lawn mowing season. So she mows the lawn if it needs done. She'll go get her oil changed. Oh, cool. You can't hear Hill anymore. Perfect.
Keep going, Ryan.
So, she does do everything. So I like to think of my how would you put it? Time management. So I see Hill at times, especially, we kind of had kids later in life.
Mm-hmm.
We used to be a little bit neater, a little bit tidier. Then you have kids, and with kids, you work long days. And the last thing I want to do is come home and just the rest of my day clean house, So I do let things get piled up a little bit. But I want to get things done. Where I feel good and where I feel comfortable is I make a really good meal, like a detailed meal, and get into it and serve that up for Hill because she does do a ton of other things that I just see it as kind of a time waste, to be honest.
That's kind of how I feel too. So I like to call it a skill, the ability to ignore a giant mess, and get work done.
My wife does not have that skill.
Sounds like Corey doesn't have it either.
I do in some rooms of the house,
but certain rooms, no.
Yeah.
So what's with the bed? Make your bed premise then.
So what William McRaven's talking about is just start your day with a completed task. Start off with a success.
Okay.
Because some days you're going to go through and you're going to focus on something that you don't complete that day. And to have something that you can look back on and feel good about, some accomplishment.
Yeah. I can really see that. I mean, I know, there's days where everything's a little overwhelming. You may have 10, 12 projects set to go, and it's hard to get started just because there's so many. At least I do. But once you get one done, the next one follows. You almost get kind of in this rhythm or this, this feeling like, all right, that one's done, right on to the next one, right on to the next one.
Yeah.
There's days I don't get anything done because it's too overwhelming. I just go for a hike. And then there's days that I get one project done, and then I go right to the second one and third one. And those are the days that I'll do like 10 or 12 things that I needed to get done for a while. But if it's a little overwhelming, sometimes it is hard to get that one thing done. So I can see where this is going. Getting that one project first thing in the morning kind of gets that ball rolling.
Corey, how do you get things done?
It's been tough. That's why this book is good for me, because the last 9 months have been rough. I mean, just with moving, we moved into a condo that was way small for our family. It totally functioned. We've survived, barely, I think. There's probably some emotional damage that's been done.
You're still married.
Yeah, we survived. Moving the business and everything at the busiest time, June, July, and August are the most, absolutely 90% of everything that happens at Elk 101 happens in those 3 months. We started building a house in June. We moved in June, running the business in June, building the house in June, trying to plan for hunting season with my stuff in storage. I mean, just everything was discombobulated and out of routine for me, and health and, just everything. It's been a rough 9 months, so I haven't had that structure of accomplishment or completing tasks. And so this was good. I may not make the bed every morning. I mean, that might not be my task, but it reminds me, do something. Find something that gets you in a rhythm that you do every day that you can look forward to and look forward to accomplishing. And it reminded me when I was down in Mississippi last year visiting with Will Primos, he's asleep every night by 7:30. And he gets up every morning at 3 or 3:30. And I asked him, the office doesn't open. Nobody's there till 8 o'clock. What do you do? And he works out. He does his daily devotional. So, whether it's reading scriptures, whether it's working out, whatever it is, having something that you look forward to getting up and doing, and that you can say, I did that today, I accomplished it. It's important.
Ryan, what do you do that actually, well, I'm going to ask you, Corey, first. You're talking about doing something productive and getting it done every day, first thing.
Yeah.
But what is it that Corey Jacobsen actually does? If it's not make the bed, what is it that works for Corey?
I'm really good at hearing and understanding principles. I'm not as good at applying them yet. So for me, I've been so overwhelmed with emails and, listen to the 4-hour work week and stuff. It's, do emails last, set a time aside. And it's one of those checklist things. I just can't have unanswered emails. So for me, I've been doing that in the morning, is going and tackling emails and getting that done. Then that's off my plate. It's not cluttered. I'm not thinking about that. I can go on to something more creative at that point. and know that is accomplished. It's something that's important to accomplish, and once that's done, I can get onto the maybe more important things, bigger things.
Nice. So, Ryan, what about you? What actually do you do that makes you feel like you got something done?
Well, I will relate this to hunting in a way. I'm really big on food. So, meal prep is something I will do religiously every week. And so whether it's a Saturday or Sunday, I have to make sure I get my food prep done.
So are you prepping for the week? Like, are you doing?
Yes. Yeah. And certain times of the year that changes. Certain times of the year I know I have to put up so much food in a week, or my garden's going to go, to weed, and it's just I'm not going to get enough of it put up. I'm going to start losing stuff.
Yep.
So food preservation, canning. I love to spend a day, and it's a good solid day of sitting down and canning. Those are the days I feel like I've done the most.
Yep.
It's something that is a big benefit to myself. I feel good about doing it because it's such a benefit to my family. I feel like the food is more important. It's more beneficial. So
it's sustaining it, and it's something that you're going to be able to look at, and that reward lasts for a long time. And so accomplishing it in one day, the fruits of it go on for
everybody's got those things where they feel like they've accomplished something very special. And for me, it's always been food. And I think that's why I love hunting so much. But as far as the gardening part, and when you grow a giant garden and you have a lot of work ahead of you. Once you get it grown, once it's popping, man, it's like here it comes. In August, July, August, you're canning and you're dehydrating and you're replanting throughout the summer. So those are the days that I feel like I've accomplished the most. And fortunately, like I said before, my wife does a lot of the other ancillary things in life where I get to really focus on that. I don't know. If you haven't had a garden, you don't really understand how much time is involved in maintaining it and trying to get to the point where you've got enough food over the winter to feed everyone, with most meals. Yep. So that for me, that's my biggest accomplishment. Food prep, Saturday or Sunday.
Now, Ryan, I heard you on a podcast the other day with Hillary, and you were talking about physical activity and like how does that play a role for you
as far as feeling accomplished?
Yep.
You're talking. That's another big one. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, actually. And probably similar to everybody in our community, it's one of those pieces to my year where we're in our 40s. Mm-hmm. Every day is important. A little bit of physical activity every day is important. If you love hunting and you love, being in the mountains, you love doing these things so much, you're going to spend the time on a daily basis to do something. And, that is one of those things where I do not let that slide. I will make it a point every day to do something.
What happens if you don't? And you don't for days after day
I feel like crap. Absolutely. I feel lazy. I feel fat. I'm not fat, but I feel like I'm going the wrong direction, and this is going to hurt my long-term benefits.
How much of that do you think is mental versus physical?
It's mental for sure. I know, if I miss, a couple days with just no activity, or if I have to drive too much for work, I just feel lousy. I'm a grouchy person. I'm not fun to be around, and
I bet it's both. I bet it's a lot of both. But there's a physiological change.
I think it is more in my mind, though. For me, if I don't get it, I'm not literally going the wrong direction. I can't run a hill next week because I didn't work out for 3 days. But it just feels like I'm going the wrong direction.
I think physically you need that release. I coach high school basketball this first year, and I'm coaching my son's team, and I played high school and college basketball. And I have never had the stress that I have coaching because I don't have that physical release of that adrenaline and everything. As a player, you can take all of that and you're on the court, you're giving it all, and at the end of the game, you're exhausted, you're drained, but you aren't stressed. Mm-hmm. As a coach, I've been more nauseous and more wound up and laying there looking at the wall trying to fall asleep because I don't have that physical outlet of what they're doing.
Yeah.
And so I think that's important to have that physical outlet to clear your mind.
Yeah, and I feel that. I feel lousy. I'm sure you do as well. And my wife will tell you, for me, I used to make her do a lot of hikes. And this is before she really knew me, back when we were dating. And she quickly realized that if she wanted to turn around like a mile or two before we got to like some lake or some peak somewhere, I was going to be a grouchy SOB for probably a week before we could actually try to get in there again. And something in my mind I wanted to accomplish. I got a goal. I want to go do it. I want to accomplish it. I want to get to the peak. I want to get an animal. I want to, do whatever, get to that lake and fish. If I don't accomplish that, I don't know what it is, but she could probably tell you physiologically what that is. But I just feel lousy. And something in my head is just telling me I didn't do enough.
So when you get up in the morning, Corey, what do you do when you have some things you need to accomplish?
It's tough right now. Our son is in high school. We live 25 minutes out of town from where school is. He goes to early morning seminary, so I get up in the morning, literally climb out of bed, throw my clothes on, jump in the truck, and drive him to meet his ride for that. And then I've just gotten the habit of going straight from there to the office that I share with Tyler Crockett, which is a painting office. And so his guys are in there lacquering boards and doing things that, I can't think sometimes because there's so much paint fumes in the air. And so it's that whole combination of, I just don't have my space. I don't have my organization and my structure. So that's what my day is like right now, is getting up early, going straight to work, and then leaving work early, going into basketball practice, and then coming home and trying to recoup some of the stuff at home, which we're in the middle of building, so doing tile backsplash. And so my life for the last 9 months has been out of sync with what's normal for me.
Okay.
And being a control freak, I don't like change. And
you've gone through a lot of change.
Yeah.
Moving is like a major, what do they say? It's like one of the top 3 major life change events of your life each time you move. Big deal.
And so I think that's why this book resonated with me, is there's so many things that I needed a reminder that I needed to do, not just think about, not just say this is who I am and what I do, things I needed to actually apply. And so that's why I think I took notes of the book and, I need to do this. What am I going to do first thing in the morning? I need to get my structure back. I need to say I'm not doing emails from 7 until 11 o'clock. I'm going to do them every Friday, whatever it is.
Yeah, batch
but
them
it's,
up
and that's item number 1 on his list of 10 things to do. And there were several others, I think, that resonated as well.
So what is your plan now, then? Like, share with us the things you learned.
Overall, or just in that one aspect of making my bed? What's the...
Yeah.
On that?
Overall.
Whew. That's...
Or start at the beginning.
So overall, I just... I spend a lot of my day doing little things that don't contribute to the end goal of what my business is.
Okay.
And so I've either got to scale down, or if it continues to grow like it is, I have to bring in help. And that's point number 2 in his book, was you can't do it alone. And for me, on a life scale, it's my wife. I can't accomplish anything that I do without her taking care of the 99 things she does to allow me to accomplish my one thing.
Yeah.
And, on the business side of it, for me, I think that's where my biggest struggle is the growth of Elk 101 has got to the point where I realize I can't go it alone. I have to have somebody there to support and do some of these other functions that are keeping me from focusing on the heart of the business.
Yeah.
And so that's probably, whether that's farming it out, contracting it out, hiring an employee, I haven't got to that decision yet, but I know I can't go into June by myself anymore.
And for a self-proclaimed control freak, that's got to be one of the most difficult pieces for you, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Because I've got to give responsibility that somebody else is going to be able to interact with members of the online course or visitors to Elk 101 in a way that I would.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's, I know.
And double down that this is something that, this isn't just a job. This is something that this is your baby.
It is.
Right? This is something you've grown, you've created it all by yourself. And yeah, I could see that.
So that's tough. He shares a story, and it's a fascinating, probably the most fascinating story that he shared. But he was out for a routine parachute jump, climbed up to 12,000 feet, and jumped out of the airplane with, other people. And he was free falling, doing his free fall, checking his altimeter, and got ready to deploy the parachute, and looked down below him, and another diver had slipped in directly below him. And as he was getting ready to deploy the parachute, the person below him did. And before he could even react, he said he went into a dive trying to divert and get off to the side, and it all just happened so fast that at 180 miles an hour or whatever speed it is, he smacked into this deployed parachute that was now full of air. And it knocked him, head over heels, and he's free falling there, barely conscious, trying to regain, semblance. And he said, just as a reaction, the instinct was pull the parachute. And so he pulled his parachute cord, and the first parachute came out to deploy and didn't fully deploy and was fluttering. And he looked, and the nylon strap that's attached to it was wrapped around his right leg. And so he's fumbling with it, and as he's fumbling with it, he realizes the second parachute is caught up on his back, and the nylon strap to it is wrapped around his left leg. Now these two parachutes are connected together. The first one comes out, and it pulls the second one out in a straight 180-degree line. And when they go, they're taut, very tight at 180 degrees. And he's looking down at his legs, one with one parachute cord wrapped around it, one with the other one. And he felt the parachute slide off his back, and as the first parachute caught, those two things went 180 degrees tight and separated his pelvis by 5 inches.
Oh, man.
And he had free fell 4,000 feet at that point, so he's 1,200 feet above the ground. He's screaming in pain, and he lands. He says, fortunately, my parachute's deployed. Unfortunately, every muscle that attaches from my pelvis to my stomach is completely severed.
Right.
My shoulders and arms are spasming from all the muscles contracting and ripped apart. And
just a day at the office.
Yeah.
Jeez.
He lands on the ground. And, he says,
smokes.
My military career should have been over.
Yeah.
It should have been over. And he had a good friend who was able to get him bypassed the military clearance, physical clearance to be a Navy SEAL. And he said, without somebody looking out for me in that way, my career would have been over. I was able to continue serving. But, it was the doctors, it was his wife, it was the friends that kept encouraging him. Physically, his entire life, he'd been able to accomplish anything he wanted to do. And this time he wasn't able to. He wasn't able to overcome it on his own. And so having a team of people around him to support him through that and get him through it was critical. And, so for me, yes, that's something I need to implement. I need to have on the business side somebody to support what I'm doing because I can't do it alone. I can't go it alone. Life, as we relate life and hunting and business and everything, I think they're all very interrelated.
Yeah.
And in life, for me, it's my wife and friends, Dirk and Donnie, good friends that have my back. In hunting, Ryan talks. He hunts a lot alone. For me, as an elk hunter and calling elk. Yeah, absolutely, I can go out and call elk by myself, but I think it makes me a better hunter to have somebody else, that I can either call for or that can call for me. It makes us more successful, more efficient, maybe is a better word. So,
right. Yeah, I think the way I do it is not the most efficient or the smartest by any stretch. I think I do that for different reasons, but as far as efficiency and overall success, I think you're doing it the right way, having buds to back you up like Donnie and Dirk.
Especially when you are successful, then it's really good to have buddies there.
Absolutely.
Help pack it down.
Yeah, I look at that like I went on a Coos deer hunt last week with Randy Newberg, and I wanted to spot and stalk a Coos deer. That was what I wanted. It was drought conditions, some of the hottest in a while. It was perfect for sitting just a water hole. The water holes weren't pressured. I probably could have sat there and shot a great buck from a water hole. I just didn't want that hunt. I wanted the one where I did the spot and stalk thing. Mm-hmm. And so I just kept doing it, quote unquote, maybe the hard way. I wouldn't say it's the most efficient, but it's what I wanted on that particular hunt.
Yeah.
Right.
I'd say the same thing here. It's like solo hunting for elk. At times, that's what Ryan wants. Probably not the most efficient.
Yeah. No, it's not. Not even close.
But I think you do need a day or two by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I think, you just need that time away to mentally do your own thing, not feel like somebody else is wanting you to do something else, just to...
Sometimes you need a month if Aaron's your hunting partner.
Yeah, I do it for different reasons, for sure. Not to be more successful, but I'm no bones about it. I'm an introvert, and I do enjoy my time by myself. I just like, maybe I'm not a control freak at my house, but up there I want to be more of a control freak. Yeah. I want every decision to be mine. Every direction I go is just instinct. Go and don't discuss it. I don't know why I'm like that up there versus at home, but those are my reasons, and it's definitely not the most efficient.
No.
So back to the book.
Yeah.
So this discussion about doing it alone versus, with a team, and this is not the first time in your life where you've gotten to a point with, like, for example, Extreme Elk Magazine,
right.
Or you get to a stage where you're like, okay, I can't do it all.
Yeah.
So you've been here before where you need help, where you need to recruit or gather the forces to help you out, keep things going. But we've talked about this too. This is not a strength of yours.
No, it's not. And with Extreme Elk Magazine, we sold it. It got to that size, I had to make a decision, keep growing it, keep going with it, or sell it, and I sold it. And took Elk 101 and focused on it, and now it's to the point, we had 9.2 million page views on Elk 101 last year. That's a lot of traffic. And on that is a contact us form. Yeah. And so those emails come through, and so for me to sit down and personally reply to every email is time consuming, but that doesn't pay the bills. Replying to an email is important, but it doesn't allow me time to go and market the online course, which is what we use to pay the bills. And so looking at it.
Yeah, or building content, period, which
totally
is
a whole nother thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So I need somebody to help me develop content and record it, produce it, publish it. I need somebody to answer emails and take care of that. I need somebody to help with social media. I need somebody that has marketing skills to be able to market them. All these different facets that I've been doing for the last 7 years. Now I have to find a way to disseminate that and delegate that. And that's absolutely my greatest weakness in business.
Yeah.
Comes to chores and stuff, I can delegate like crazy. But when it comes to the business side, I've gotta.
Yeah, it's not my thing to delegate. Like, I have a really difficult time when I ask someone to do it, and I think I drive them crazy, especially if it takes a certain level of, like, creativity.
Yeah.
So then, like, I wanted to make a mountain goat film for last night, and so I enlisted some help because I just didn't have the bandwidth and the time. But then I'm like, no, I don't like it. And so I'm talking to the film guys, and we're going over the editing process, and it's a back and forth thing. And I don't handle having other people take care of that for me.
Yeah.
Well, and something even as simple as a podcast that I want to edit. Like, I have a hard time having someone else, edit and publish it.
Yep. Right. Yeah, I think you and I have talked about that before, and you've mentioned that, like, especially the films, which seems to be your biggest passion, right?
Mm-hmm.
Creating these incredible films like the one last night. And I've heard you say that over and over. It's yours. Everything you create is yours, and that's your baby in a way. So, I know you've struggled with, just releasing and letting somebody else edit that and
like
put their music to it or put their story to it.
It's like last night, that film was. I've never had someone help out. I've never had to rely on someone else to make the film as much as I did last night for that film, and it's not easy. It's not easy for me, and
do you think that's because when somebody else has their fingers in it, it doesn't mean as much in the end? Because there's a little piece of that you lost, or?
I don't think that's it. Corey's got a look on his face.
It's not it at all. It's control, man. It's just knowing you've got an idea in your mind.
Yep.
And that is the way you envision the final product. And when you turn that over to somebody else, you've lost that control.
Right.
And for me, I think Brian and I are very similar in that if we give that to somebody else and give them that control, we've lost it. And at the end of the day, it probably doesn't matter. It might even be better if I let somebody else do something for me that I've been doing.
Here's what I can tell you. As I watch it, I'm like, no. Yep. And I sit there and I'm like, and the reality is
nobody else is paying attention to those things.
Who else knows? All I know is no. That's not what
doesn't sit right with you.
That's
how they're
not it. That's not it there. And then they'll be like, well, what is it? Like, what is it that needs to happen? And I'm like, this and this and music, and then you
here,
do
just
this
give me the mouse, let me do it.
Totally. And then I'm like, yeah, that's it right there. And they're probably going, what the hell? Like, how is this?
Why didn't you just do it yourself?
Well, yeah. And what ends up happening for me often is I end up taking the mouse and just doing it.
Right.
And it's so difficult for me to when it comes to that. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, I've also just figured out too that there are things that you can ask other people to help you with and get a lot of, but it'd be like having someone else write a book for you about your thoughts on life. You know, like they can't. It's you. You're the person. It's your book. It's your story. You can't give that over to someone else and have them just do it. It doesn't work. Otherwise, it's not yours anymore.
It's not like we aren't running a franchisable business that can be repeated in different cities and
this isn't a Big Mac.
Train somebody. Yeah,
this, and this, and it's repeatable.
Yeah. It's our life that we've turned into a business, and when you do that, it's centered on us in our mind. Maybe it's maybe it's not, but in my mind, it's those people who come to the website are coming there, sending an email, and they expect a reply from me. And maybe they don't, but I at least want to be able to reply when they say, what would you do? Can you hunt elk mixed in with cattle? In my mind, I immediately have an answer to that. If I have a customer service person taking care of it, they might answer it differently than me. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter at all. That person got an answer. It was a legitimate answer. But if it wasn't my answer, I stress about it. And so
I get that.
And as I sit down and I watch something, I sit down and I'm like, okay, this person take this footage and I'll take this footage and we each make a film out of it, like a 5-minute film. Because I've done it at film school. I've stepped back and I've looked at it and I've been like, okay, what this person did with that footage, I would do it completely different. And so when you're trying to communicate your vision and your idea of it to someone else, and they can kind of get it maybe, but at the end of the day, so for example, as I talk to editors, they would say, well, okay, I'm trying to understand you. Why did you want to tell the story like this, and why did you rearrange it here, and why did you choose this song and not the one that we picked? And it's like, because this feels right and what you did feels wrong. That's it.
Yep.
Okay.
It comes down to a feeling, and I can't explain it.
What if there's a little more creativity that somebody brought into the mix that you looked at and thought, yeah. So you think you'd still say no? I would
be like, I love your creativity. It's better than mine.
But I'm going to do it my way.
No, I would. Okay. I would if I like it more than my own, which I often do with certain creative people.
I think that's the difference between you control freaks and myself. Maybe I don't have the confidence enough in my creativity because I love other people's input. My wife is super creative. So, if I'm writing a story or something like that, sometimes she hits me with things that I don't think of. And so it's like, yeah, I like that input. But
it depends. Like, there are people where I look at what they've done with something that I've recorded, and I'm like, wow, I wish I had that kind of ability. Mm-hmm. And then there are times where you're like, it just isn't working. But I don't think it has. I think it has everything to do with just. So, for example, on the podcast, Gritty Bowmen podcast, everybody that has listened for a long time knows that my Gritty sister edits the show a lot.
Yeah.
So she probably edits 60% of the podcast. So I'll sit down and let's say I do a podcast and I record it for an hour and a half, 2 hours, let's say. And out of that 2 hours, there's an hour and 40 minutes of gold nuggets. And then there's, 20 minutes of just awkward conversation or just a tangent that needs to be edited out or whatever. Little bits here and there, or maybe the beginning is just dead. But then after you get past that first 20 minutes, it's like, it's gold. Mm-hmm. It's podcast gold. Well, I don't even have to talk about that. I don't have to say a word to my sister. I just send it to her and I just say, clean it up and publish it. Mm-hmm. And my sister will watch it and she'll be like, boom. And then she'll have done what I would have done. Mm-hmm. I don't have to explain it to her. We think the same way. We feel it the same way. And so she does it the same way. But other people who aren't my flesh and blood, like sibling, who grew up like, right next to me my whole life and kind of sees the world and feels the world a lot like I do, and where we're so in our minds work so much the same. When you give your stuff to someone else who's really different, I'll end up with something that isn't as closely aligned with me and what I think. And so maybe they'll edit out something. They're like, I didn't like that. I felt it was inappropriate. And I'll be like, are you kidding? That was my favorite part of the podcast. Like, put it back. And so and then vice versa. They'll have left something in there and I'm like, take that out. Like, that's a waste of time. Nobody's interested in that little tidbit. Take it out. What? And so I can't explain it. All I know is Gritty Bowmen.
But have you allowed other people besides Katie to edit your podcast?
My brother.
Okay.
My brother Brent, who he and I are as opposite as you can get in so many ways.
All right.
And you've seen him walking around. I cannot trust Brent to edit it the way that I would edit it at all. And so he'll do.
So what I'm hearing here is, are you and Corey on the same page? Because I hear Corey saying something completely different. I hear you saying that you want complete control as long as
they do it how I want it done.
They do it how you want it done. So you got all this confidence in Katie. She does an amazing job. She's done it enough to know what you like, possibly. Yeah. But Corey, is that something that you would be willing to do if you had somebody like a Katie that did it your way, or would you give up that control at all?
Totally.
Yeah.
No, okay. I totally would. And I think, Brian, this is content. Brian creates content for a living, and it's got to reflect him.
Sure.
And for me, there are several parts of my business that don't have to have my flavor on it. Customer service type thing. If there's something really technical, they can forward an email to me. But for 90% of them, they can handle. And so finding somebody like that can relieve some of that load and free up some of my bandwidth, I absolutely can do that. And it's just finding that right person.
There's not enough Katies of the world.
I was just going to say,
quite honest,
because it would be part customer service, part social media, part marketing, part all of this. And so finding somebody like that, if they're good, they're probably already doing it themselves.
That's another thing is, it doesn't have to be just like me, and I love input. And so when I share stuff and people that are really talented or have a view other than mine, I love to get their input on it. But I am surprised how much of what I produce is just what feels right.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
What feels right. And I can't, I listened to an author the other day, famous author, describing her writing process and how she comes up with chapters, how she writes her stories. And at the end of the day, for her, it's just she trusts her own instincts, how she feels. Her creative juices get flowing, and she starts putting it out there how she feels it. She can't have someone else do that for her.
Right.
It's not something she can just outsource. And so for me, figuring out what I can outsource and what I can't outsource is a big part of this process.
Yep.
And so I've been experimenting with having more people do more with Gritty Bowmen content than I have, getting support. And what I'm finding is there's certain things that I can ask other people to do, and it's just sort of, and they do a great job. It's more, I guess, less high-end, like, creative stuff. And whenever I go to the point of, hey, I want to outsource this whole big creative idea, that's when I circle
really
the drain.
Nervous.
Yeah, that's when I get mad. That's when I get frustrated. That's when there's a lot of stress. And Corey had someone help him with his film Wyoming. And I remember calling Corey up and asking him, like, dude, I've tried this a few times, asking for some help in making a film. How did you make this work? And we talked about it for quite a while. And I still haven't figured out how to do it.
Well, and for me, John Abernathy edited that film, and he filmed it, so he was there with us. He
was a part of
the I know
story.
John well enough. John knows me well enough that he knows the message, not only the style of hunting we do, but the message we want to give in a film. And so he was able to take it, and he may call me and say, don't you remember the 10 edits you made me do? But I don't know that we made him, that I called him and said, hey, I really want to change this, or let's take this out or do anything. I gave him pretty free reign. I think he called me and said, I need these voiceovers for you or from you for it. And we did it. And it's hands down been our, Elk 101 production, been our most popular film. We're almost at 1 million views on YouTube on it.
Well, what, if you were to summarize this book.
We're only on point 2.
Yeah, I know.
So the next one that I thought there were 2 of them there, but the one was Life's Not Fair, Deal With It. And I find myself sometimes throwing a pity party. I mean, not big. I'm pretty good at moving beyond things and getting over them, but there's sometimes I dwell too long on things that just happen that are nobody's fault. I'm not trying to blame anybody, but I dwell on him too long, and so one of his things was Life's Not Fair, something about a sugar cookie. When he was in Navy training, they'd make him go out and jump in the ocean, get soaking wet, and then roll in the sand until they were completely covered. Clothes, hair, they'd throw sand up in the air and get everywhere, and then they had to spend the rest of the day without brushing the sand off. So they had to walk around as a sugar cookie coated in sand. He's like, it's the most uncomfortable thing I have ever done, and I've done a lot of really hard things. That's the most uncomfortable thing. And he's like, they would pick people just randomly to go and be a sugar cookie. It wasn't as a punishment necessarily. It was to teach you life's not fair. Deal with it. This is what you've got today. You're going to deal with it. You still have to go through the rest of the training and everything. And so that was a good one. I think at the end, the message was just don't give up. Hope is so important. And when they, the final day of Hell Week at training, they would go out and get in a mud pit up to their neck in mud, and it's cold, 40 degrees, something. They're shivering. They're in it all night. It's dark out. And the guy who's running it would come up and say, there's a warm fire over here. We're cooking marshmallows, whatever it is, really trying to get inside their head mentally. And the guy that was standing next to him, he said, anybody that wants to come out can come out right now. Just, leave the mud pit. You're done.
Ding the bell.
You're on it. Yep, ring the bell. And the guy next to him started getting up. He's like, no, don't. He grabbed his arm, and the guy pulled his arm out and continued up there. And several people, he said, as soon as you see one person go, the floodgates open, and everybody realizes I'm not the only one, and they'll go. And he said he just noticed all these people slowly starting to move towards getting out of the mud pit. And somewhere behind him, somebody started singing. And pretty soon everybody joined in and was singing, and all these people that were leaving turned around and came back and joined in with the singing. And so, his point was just give somebody hope. If you're up to your neck in mud, start singing. You're suffering just like everybody else. Don't make a big deal out of it. Don't let somebody else, make a big deal out of your suffering. give them hope because they're probably standing next to you in the same situation. You might not be able to see them. That was his analogy. It's pitch dark out, but there's somebody right next to you who's going through something very similar. And instead of complaining about it or giving up hope and making them feel like they need to give up, start singing when you're up to your neck in mud and give them hope. And then the last one was, don't ever give up. Don't ever, ever quit.
Yeah.
Now, how does that apply to hunting, Corey?
I couldn't draw a parallel with perseverance and hunting.
Singing?
Well, maybe that was. Yeah, but I mean, there's definitely times when you're up to your neck in mud hunting. Last day of the hunt and you miss your family. You've been gone for 10 days and, your son has a football game that night. It'd be real easy just to give in and drive home and be there. But if you're there and your goal is to be successful on this hunt, you can't give up even with 1 day left. You have to stick with it till the last. And I think I've shared several times on the podcast, there have been multiple hunts of mine that were unsuccessful until the last hour of the last day.
Yeah.
And things come together. And, whether it's because I get desperate and just go full bore or because, somebody's trying to teach me a lesson and sticking it out, but I
think there's something to that. I've had the same thing over, extended hunts, 7, 8, 9. If I got 10 days carved out, it's amazing how many times it comes down to that last, like it could have been a 7-day trip. It comes down on day 7. You had to get out on day 8 or day 10. I don't know how that, why it happens that way. You just like to think logically it was because you figured it out, right? But how does figuring it out know when your last day is? Because it does happen a lot on that last half hour, last hour of the last day. Yeah, I like that one. I like that lesson. I think there's a lot of kids out there that need to learn the whole sugar cookie rule.
Yeah, today. Life isn't fair.
Yep. Life isn't fair. And I think hunting hunting teaches us that, right? I mean, you can go out on a hunt and deal with weather, dealing with all kinds of things that are out of your control, but you have to deal with it. You can't throw in the towel or you'll just come back unsuccessful.
Yeah. I was listening to a show I think about this. I like the line from Hamlet where he says,
You lost me.
Hamlet, it's Shakespeare.
Oh, is that?
Yeah.
Shakespeare.
Uh-huh. And
sounds like seasoning. Is that something you put on steaks?
And he says in there, something about should I give in to the arrows and slings of outrageous misfortune? And I think that we sometimes that's what it feels like, right? It's outrageous misfortune. Mm-hmm. Like it's almost just seems so unfair. But the thing is that's what life is. It's not. There is no the idea of fair. I heard a great podcast from Andy Stump. He had on the podcast with John Dudley a few weeks ago. And he did a podcast about hunting. And he's a Navy SEAL, like SEAL Team 6. He's also jumps out of airplanes and does all this crazy, like, wingsuit dives and stuff. Broke some world records. And he's an intense dude, okay? And he said, I'm going to share my thoughts on hunting. And on this podcast, his podcast called Cleared Hot, he gives he kind of breaks it down. And somebody said, I just think it's not fair. You've been on a two-way range with animals. So you've been able to shoot or with human beings where they shoot back at you, okay? And it just seems like what you're doing here, hunting out, I don't know how you can justify going hunting on a one-way range. And it just doesn't seem ethical or right. So how do you live with yourself? And one of the things that Andy said in the podcast was, look, all I can say, let's get this out right away. You'll be a lot happier in life as soon as you figure out that nothing in life is fair. As soon as you figure that out, the rest of your life can begin.
Right.
Because it's not fair. He's like, really, on a two-way range, when I've got, missiles and stuff and airplanes overhead, and, well, the other guy has, a little Tommy gun? It's like, it's not fair. Mm-hmm. Is it fair that we were born in this country while someone else is born in a third world country in the throes of starvation? It's like, it's not fair. life isn't fair. And the idea that it is or should be is a flawed way of thinking because it's not.
Right.
And I always tell myself, things could be different tomorrow. I could lose my whole family. I could be paralyzed from the neck down. Like, life doesn't owe me anything. And so it could change at any moment. And I don't feel entitled to anything.
Life doesn't come with rewards each day, so don't expect a reward for no matter how hard you work, there might not be a reward, and that's life.
The best thing is, that you have is freedom to chase, to do something. And you can ask for that, and you can hope for that, and you can live in a place where you have that option, like we do, and be grateful for that. But there's no entitlement. Life isn't fair. So get over it.
Deal with it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we're blessed living where we do. If life isn't fair and you don't like something, you have the ability to change and make change. And, it might not be, you mentioned being paralyzed from the neck down, that you can't change that circumstance. But there are things about that you can change and make it better. Mm-hmm. So, no, overall, it was a great book. For me, like I said, just a lot of things. I am probably too aware of my weaknesses sometimes, and this book helped me not just be aware of them, but find areas that I can apply things and start thinking about the application of what needs to happen to.
Well, it's such a short read, or listen, that
read.
It seems like you can read. It's such a short read that you could hammer that book out and really get started.
I've listened to it twice. So
wow. Yeah. I'm thinking about what I could do in the morning. I'm going to let my wife keep making the bed. I'm gonna let her do that. But there's other things I can do. Mm-hmm. Gritty wife, she's got that down. I'm gonna. I was trying to think myself, what do I do each day to feel like I've accomplished something? I would say every day I have some content that I want out in the world. Mm-hmm. I want to get done. And so I have a lot of podcasts I'll have backloaded. Sometimes I wake up. I heard Tim Ferriss the other day talking about understanding behavior modification. So what are the things that you need to do to change your behavior if you don't like it? And he was going over that, and it was basically making it easy, like setting yourself up to succeed little by little. Like your goals aren't too grand.
No.
And so I found for me, I'm feeling burned out. I'm feeling tired. I'm feeling frustrated. My goal each day is, okay, I wake up in the morning and I'm like, okay, what is it? The one thing today that I want to have happen. And if I don't get anything else done, I'll have accomplished something. Yeah. And I figure out what that thing is that day. And then I get up, or I figure it out the day before, usually. And it's usually pretty simple. It's like a half-hour task. I mean, I set myself up to succeed, so I don't ever get too big into it. So, but maybe it's a podcast, introduction I want to write and record. It takes 30 minutes,
right.
And so I'll just go ahead and hammer that out. And then, of course, I want to get a lot of other things done that day. But it's sort of like what Ryan was saying earlier. If I just knock that one out, it's like, now, and before you know it, I've accomplished a lot that day.
That ball starts rolling, and you just move right on to the next one and right on to the next one.
Yeah,
for sure.
But I'll pick that one thing. And one thing that Tim Ferriss mentioned was, don't pick, I'm going to write a book today and get it done. Because that's what a lot of people do. Or they say, I'm going to go to the gym every day for 5 days, every day for an hour from now on. You last 3 days and you're done.
Yeah.
You quit. So he's like, if you say, I'm going to go every Tuesday and Friday for 20 minutes,
you can manage it.
You start managing. Or I'm just going to go to the gym. I'm not even going to work out.
Yep. And I think one of the things that's important is when you figure that out, you've got to prioritize it. And for me, that's been the struggle. I know I want to shoot my bow every day. I know I want to work out every day. But when I have 70 emails, and then I'm trying to do this, and then all of a sudden I realize practice is early today, and then I get home and I've got to, take the kids. I didn't do that one thing. So I think making your bed, the important principle in that is do it first.
Yeah.
Prioritize, do the thing that you need to succeed at first in the day so you get it done and other things don't come up. And then, like I say, everything else will fall in and you'll be able to accomplish even more than if you start trying to just distractedly go out and and do a bunch of different things and then not even accomplish what you really wanted to.
I think we need to read Jordan Peterson's book, like the 12 Rules for Life. It's very similar to what you read, but probably another level. But he talks about, and I've heard this said before, and I did this years ago, write down what you would like your life to be. Like, what do you want it to be each day when you wake up? Like, what is your ideal day? What does it look like? How awesome is it, or how boring is it? Like, what is it? What is that for you? And you might write it down and go, that's my ideal life. And you're like, if you really think about it, you're like, well, actually, drinking pina coladas on the beach in Hawaii would get pretty old after a while. Like, there's nothing challenging in that.
So funny you say that. We were driving home the other night, and my wife said something along those lines. What's your, when you close your eyes and think of your perfect day, what is it? I said, you know what, right now, I don't have a clear thought on that. I think I just need to spend a couple of weeks on a beach with Kenny Chesney. And she said, what? Why Kenny Chesney? I said, he just seems to have it figured out. Like, he's always just chill, just kicking back on a beach with his sandals on. And, he's got it figured out. If I hang out with him, maybe I'll figure it out. She's like, oh, so you don't want to just hang out with Kenny Chesney? I said, no. I just want to figure out how he figured out what he's figured out.
No, I think that when you sit down and you think about those things, and if you've ever experienced that, you'll find out real quick. Like, when I started working from home 3 days a week, and I only went to the office, only legit worked 2 days a week. The other 3 days, I just hung out, worked out at the gym. I didn't have Gritty Bowmen at the time. I just did stuff. And after a while, though, it was like Groundhog's Day. There wasn't a lot of meaning in any of it, but I just did it. It was relaxing. I felt fit and I felt good, but I got where I felt unfulfilled.
Right.
And so at that point, but when you write down what your ideal day would be like, for me, it ended up being, I want to make a difference. I want to change people's ideas. I want to I want to meet people and learn from them. And it became all of this. And then, okay, well, what would I need to do what would I need to do each day to make that be a reality? And then it was like, well, I need to, there's some things like I would like to not have debt. Okay, I would like to have savings. I would like to have freedom to go do this. And I'd like to own less stuff because I feel like this is just keeping me from having the freedom I want. And anyway, it just turned into a plan. But I think a lot of people never take the time to be like, what would an ideal day look like? And then, and be honest about it.
Yep.
Because, like I said,
long-term ideal day, because you can say, I want to be on the San Carlos in Arizona hunting elk. That's an ideal day. Mm-hmm. But it's not realistic every day. So, that long-term, what is your ideal life? Mm-hmm. What does the day consist of in that?
And you start to go, okay, well, this is what socially I'd like, my family-wise, and work-wise, mentally, spiritually. Like, there's all these aspects to what makes you feel good about you and the life you're living. And I think a big part of it is meaning, finding meaning in your life. And there's not a lot of meaning when it boils down to every day hunting elk and nothing else. Yep. Right? So that ideal day is a little more complex than you think at first blush. But once you get into it and I think you analyze that, you'll realize, man, I'm nowhere near my ideal day. Like my life now is not my ideal day. So then you can start to put together a plan. I just think a lot of us just go through you just get swept down the river of life and don't take the time to
spend 4 hours replying to emails instead of figuring out what you want to really be doing.
Yep. So it reminds me of the book 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Covey.
Yep, and where he has the quadrants, where we all spend our time mostly dealing with urgent and completely unimportant. The most urgent, but the most unimportant. Where we really should be spending our time in that quadrant of most important, but least urgent.
Right.
And it's so hard to get our minds there just because of the nature of the human animal, But that's where you need to be. And when you can get yourself there, and you really spend your time there, that's, I think, when life changes.
Yep.
Where you really become fulfilled. All right. Well, I just want to hang out forever, but we can't. I gotta let these guys go. Any closing thoughts, Ryan?
Well, I know what I'm going to be listening to on my flight home for sure. Maybe I'll listen to it twice.
Change your underwear.
Change your underwear. Make your bed in the morning. Yeah, I don't know. Closing thoughts. I mean, I think I didn't talk a lot in this podcast. I'm listening to you guys. I'm listening to what Corey's saying, and I'm getting a lot out of it. You know, it makes me want to change some things and just taking those philosophies that he read in that book and do things. That's why I like hanging out with guys like you guys and this community is I'm always learning. You know, I'm a mess, so I'm always trying to figure things out myself. And, you know I don't have it figured out, but no, I could see a lot of value in those lessons that we just talked about.
Yeah.
So I definitely have some things I need to work on.
Awesome. Corey?
You know, I just, so stepping back, when I called Brian last week, I guess we texted and just said, hey, looking forward to seeing each other at the show and hanging out. And Brian said, I am too. There's a few people I just really want to see and spend some time with. And I sent him a text and said, there's one person that I've not met that I'd really like to meet, and that's Ryan. And he replied and said, that's so funny. Just this morning I was thinking, I need to get you and Ryan together on a podcast. So this is a bucket list for me to be able to meet Ryan and spend a few minutes getting to know him and seeing, I mean, I knew he was awesome, but just down to earth, very cool.
I have almost met you probably 3 or 4 times. You're just so popular. It's hard to get in your inner circle. There's always guys talking to you, and it's just the person.
Ryan's not going to charge up to anybody.
I'm not. I'm pretty reserved. But no, it's been a pleasure meeting you finally.
Yeah, totally.
Have an opportunity to do this with you.
Yep. Yeah, we need to do it again. Because
give me some time so I can read one of these books.
Yeah,
I know.
We're an hour and 44 minutes. We could do a podcast tonight on this book. It's an hour and 44-minute listen.
Totally, we could. Yeah, seriously, there is not enough. I feel like we just touched the tip of the iceberg. There's so much that I want you two to talk about and to hear your different ideas, because you're both killers. You both get it done every single hunt almost. You have this drive that a lot of people want to tap into for hunting in the outdoors, and so there's so much we haven't covered between the two of you that I'd like to get into. So we'll do it.
Definitely,
we'll get it. All right, guys.
Okay.
Thanks as always.
Stay gritty.
Stay gritty.
Despite our ever-changing, ever-indignant world with its growing ignorance of and indifference to the ways of the wild, I remain a predator, pitying those who revel in artificiality and synthetic success while regarding me and my kind as relics of a time and place no longer valued or understood. I stalk a real world of dark wood and tall grass stirred by a restless wind blowing across sunlit water and beneath star-strewn sky. And on those occasions when I choose to kill, to claim some small part of nature's bounty for my own, I do so by choice, quickly, with the learned efficiency of a skilled hunter. Further, in my heart and mind, I know the truth and make no apologies for my actions or my place and time. Others around me may opt to eat only plants, nuts, and fruits. Still others may employ faceless strangers to procure their meats, their leather, their feathers, and all those niceties and necessities of life. Such is their right, of course, and I wish them well. All I ask in return is no one begrudge me, and all of us who may answer the primordial stirrings within our hunter souls, my right to do some of these things myself.
What you just heard is a quote from M.R. James. We truly live in a world that is largely ignorant and indifferent to the ways of the wild. And although some regard us as relics of a time and place no longer valued or understood, we have the opportunity to change the way these people view the hunter and the hunt. We can share our experiences and nature's bounty with those who employ these faceless strangers. And by so doing, we make a difference, not just for ourselves, but for the wild animals and the wild places we care so deeply about. Never stop sharing your passion for hunting and the outdoors. Our wild animals and our wild places depend on it.
This is Ty Stubblefield, and you're listening to the Gritty Bowmen.
Gritty Bowmen.